Elijah McAllister dropped to his knees and pressed his ear against the cold cellar door. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear anything else. But then it came again. A woman's voice, weak and broken, crying out from somewhere deep beneath the earth.
"Please," she whispered. "Please, somebody. I don't want to die down here."
Eli's blood turned to ice. He had bought this ranch to escape his past. He never expected to find someone else's nightmare buried in his own backyard. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very last word. And leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far the story travels. Eli McAllister had been in Silver Creek, Colorado for exactly 6 hours when he heard the screaming. He was standing in the kitchen of his new ranch house, trying to get the rusted pump to work, when the sound cut through the August heat like a knife. It was faint. It was desperate. And it was coming from somewhere it shouldn't be. He froze, his hands still gripping the pump handle. What in God's name? The sound came again. A woman's voice, muffled, distant, but unmistakably human. Eli grabbed his rifle and stepped out onto the porch. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting everything in shades of orange and red. His nearest neighbor's property sat about a quarter-mile to the east, a big spread that had looked abandoned when he'd ridden past it earlier that day. The sound was coming from that direction. Every instinct Eli had developed during his years as a Texas Ranger told him to stay out of it. This wasn't his business. He'd come to Colorado to start over, not to get tangled up in someone else's trouble. But then the scream came again, and this time he could make out the words. "Help me! Please, someone help me!" Eli was already running before he made the conscious decision to move. He reached the neighboring property as the last light was fading from the sky. The main house stood dark and silent, its windows like empty eyes staring out at nothing. The yard was overgrown, weeds pushing up through the dirt like they were trying to reclaim the land. "Hello?" Eli called out, his rifle ready. "Anyone here?" No answer. Just the wind rustling through the dry grass and the distant sound of a coyote howling. He circled the house slowly, checking every door and window. Everything was locked up tight. If someone was living here, they weren't making themselves known. Then he heard it again, that desperate cry, coming from somewhere below him. Eli looked down at his feet. He was standing on a set of wooden cellar doors, the kind that angled down into the ground like the entrance to a storm shelter. "Hello?" he called out, louder this time. "Is someone down there?" Silence. Then, Yes, please, I'm down here. Please help me." Eli knelt down and examined the cellar doors. A heavy chain had been wrapped around the handles and secured with a padlock that gleamed silver in the fading light. This wasn't just a locked cellar. This was a cage. "Ma'am, my name is Eli McAllister," he said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I just bought the ranch next door. I'm going to get you out of there. Can you tell me your name?"
"Clara."
The voice was shaking now, trembling with something that sounded like hope and fear mixed together.
"Clara Thornton. Please, sir. Please hurry. I've been down here for so long."
"How long, ma'am?"
"I don't know anymore. Weeks, maybe longer. I stopped counting after the 3rd week."
Eli's jaw tightened. 3 weeks. Someone had kept this woman locked in a cellar for at least 3 weeks in the middle of a Colorado summer. The heat alone could have killed her. "I'm going to get you out," he said again. "Just hold on." He examined the padlock. It was solid steel, too strong to break without tools. He could shoot it off, but the noise would carry for miles. And he didn't know who had put this woman down here, or whether they might be close enough to hear. "I need to go get some tools," Eli said. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. I promise you, ma'am, I am not leaving you here."
Please,
Clara's voice cracked.
please don't be lying. Please don't be another trick.
"I ain't lying, and I don't play tricks on women in trouble. You have my word." Eli ran back to his ranch faster than he'd run in years. He grabbed his bolt cutters, a lantern, and a canteen of water, then ran back to the neighboring property without stopping to catch his breath. When he reached the cellar doors, he called out to her again. "Clara, I'm back. I'm going to cut this chain now."
You came back.
Her voice was different now, softer, almost wondering.
You actually came back.
"I told you I would." The bolt cutters made short work of the chain. Eli yanked the cellar doors open and raised his lantern, peering down into the darkness below. A woman stood at the bottom of a rough wooden staircase, one hand shielding her eyes against the sudden light. She was thin, too thin, with dark hair that fell in tangled waves past her shoulders. Her dress was torn and filthy, hanging off her frame like it had been made for a much larger person. But it was her eyes that stopped Eli cold. Even in the dim light of the lantern, he could see they were a striking shade of green, and they held more pain and determination than he had ever seen in another human being. "Come on up," he said gently. "You're safe now." Clara climbed the stairs slowly, like someone who wasn't quite sure her legs would hold her. When she reached the top and stepped out into the cool evening air, she swayed on her feet. Eli caught her before she could fall. "Easy," he said. "I've got you." Clara looked up at him, and tears began streaming down her face.
Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. I thought I was going to die down there. I really thought I was going to die.
"Who did this to you?" Eli asked, his voice hard. "Who put you in there?" Clara's expression changed. The relief in her eyes flickered and died, replaced by something that looked a lot like fear.
My brother-in-law, she said quietly. Judge Harlan Blackwood.
Eli brought Clara back to his ranch and settled her in a chair near the fireplace. Even though it was summer, she was shivering, a deep, bone-rattling tremble that wouldn't stop, no matter how many blankets he wrapped around her. He heated water and made coffee, then found some bread and dried beef in his supplies. He watched as she devoured the food with the desperate hunger of someone who had been starving, and he had to stop her from eating too fast. "Slow down," he said gently. "Your stomach won't be able to handle too much at once." Clara nodded, forcing herself to take smaller bites. Her hands were still shaking. "How long has it been since you ate?" Eli asked. "Harlan used to bring food once a week," Clara said. "But he hasn't come in. I don't know. Days, maybe longer. I lost track of time down there." "Why?" Eli's voice was harder than he intended. "Why would he do this to you?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat and empty.
My husband died 2 years ago. Thomas. He was a doctor, a good man. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. But when he died, I found out he'd left everything to me. The house, the money, everything. His brother Harlan expected to inherit it all, and when he didn't, she trailed off, staring into the fire. He tried to have me declared incompetent, she continued. Said I was hysterical, unstable. He had doctors come and examine me, men who would say whatever he paid them to say. But the court didn't believe them, so he tried a different approach. He locked you in a cellar. He told everyone I'd gone back east to visit family. Then he brought me here, to this property he owns, and he put me in that cellar, and told me I could come out when I agreed to sign over everything my husband left me. Eli felt a cold fury building in his chest. And you refused. I refused.
Clara's chin lifted slightly, and for the first time, Eli saw the steel underneath her exhaustion.
That money was Thomas's legacy. He worked his whole life for it. I wasn't going to let Harlan take it just because he thought he deserved it more than me.
So he left you to die. I think that was always his plan, if I didn't give in. A woman dies in a cellar, who's going to question it? He's a judge. He has power. He has friends. He could make the whole thing disappear. Eli stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the darkness. His hands were clenched into fists. "He ain't going to get away with this," he said quietly. "Mr. McAllister." Eli. "Eli." Clara's voice was tired. "You don't know Harlan. You don't know what he's capable of. He has half this county in his pocket. The sheriff, the mayor, half the businessmen in town. If you go up against him, he'll destroy you." Eli turned to look at her. "I've gone up against worse." "Have you?" "Ma'am, I spent 8 years as a Texas Ranger. I've faced down outlaws, murderers, and men who thought they were above the law. Your brother-in-law doesn't scare me." Clara stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you risk everything for a stranger?" Eli was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because I know what it feels like to be trapped in a dark place with no one coming to help." Clara's eyes widened slightly. "You do?" "That's a story for another time." Eli pulled a chair over and sat down across from her. "Right now, we need to figure out what to do about your brother-in-law. When do you think he'll realize you're gone?" "I don't know. He hasn't been to the cellar in days. He might not check again for a week, or he might come tomorrow." "Then we need to be ready for him." "We?" Clara shook her head. "No, I won't let you get involved in this. You've already done enough. I'll leave tonight. Find somewhere to hide." "Where?" Eli cut in. "Where are you going to go? You've got no money, no supplies, and you can barely stand up straight. If Blackwood is as powerful as you say, he'll find you before you get 10 miles. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Clara's voice cracked, the exhaustion and fear finally breaking through. "What am I supposed to do, Eli? I've been fighting him for 2 years. I've lost everything. I've lost my husband, my home, my whole life. And I'm so tired. I'm so tired of fighting." Eli reached out and took her hand. It was an impulsive gesture, one he wouldn't have made if he'd stopped to think about it. But Clara's fingers were cold and trembling, and something in him couldn't stand to see her suffering alone. "Then let me fight with you," he said quietly. "You don't have to do this by yourself anymore." Clara looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. Her green eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because everybody deserves someone in their corner. And right now, I'm the only one here." For a long moment, Clara didn't speak. Then, slowly, her fingers tightened around his. "Okay," she said, her voice barely audible. "Okay." They talked through most of the night, making plans and contingencies. Clara told him everything she knew about Harlan Blackwood, his habits, his weaknesses, the men he had in his pocket. Eli listened carefully, filing away every detail. "He'll come to the cellar eventually," Clara said. "When he does and finds me gone, he'll know someone helped me. It won't take him long to figure out it was you." "Let him figure it out. I ain't hiding." "You don't understand. He'll use the law against you. He'll say you kidnapped me, or that you're holding me against my will. He'll turn the whole town against you before you even have a chance to tell your side of the story." Eli considered this. "Then we need to tell our side first." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out." He stood up and moved toward the door. You should try to get some sleep. You can take my bed. I'll sleep out here.
I couldn't.
Ma'am, you've been sleeping on a dirt floor for 3 weeks.
You're taking the bed. Clara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. A ghost of a smile crossed her face, the first smile he'd seen from her. You're a stubborn man, Eli McAllister.
So I've been told. She stood up slowly, still unsteady on her feet. At the doorway to the bedroom, she paused and looked back at him.
Eli?
Yes, ma'am?
Thank you. For everything. For believing me. For not just walking away.
Eli nodded. Get some rest, Clara. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She disappeared into the bedroom, and Eli settled himself in the chair by the fire. He didn't expect to sleep. His mind was too full of plans and possibilities. But exhaustion pulled him under before he knew it. He dreamed of a boy with a gun and blood on the desert sand, and a voice crying out for mercy that never came.
Eli woke to the sound of hoofbeats. He was on his feet in an instant, rifle in hand, moving to the window before his eyes were fully open. The sun was just coming up over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. 3 riders were approaching his ranch. The man in front was older, maybe 50, with iron gray hair and the kind of expensive clothes that didn't belong on a working ranch. He sat his horse like a man who expected the world to bend to his will. Eli knew who it was without having to ask. He stepped out onto the porch, rifle held loose but ready. The 3 riders pulled up about 20 feet from the house. The man in front studied Eli with cold, calculating eyes. "You must be the new owner," the man said. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of something ugly underneath. "I'm Judge Harlan Blackwood. I own the property next to yours." "I know who you are," Eli said. Blackwood's eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you now? Then perhaps you can help me. I'm looking for a woman, my sister-in-law. She's been unwell, suffering from delusions. I'm afraid she may have wandered onto your property." "Ain't seen anyone." "Are you certain? She's about 35, dark hair, green eyes. Quite attractive when she's not having one of her episodes." Eli felt his jaw tighten. "I said I ain't seen anyone." Blackwood studied him for a long moment, and Eli saw the mask slip just slightly, a flash of something cold and dangerous in those calculating eyes. "I see," Blackwood said softly. "Well, if you do happen to see her, I'd appreciate you letting me know. She's a danger to herself and others. The sooner she's back under proper care, the better for everyone." "I'll keep that in mind." Blackwood smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I hope you will, Mr. McAllister. This is a small community. People here look out for each other. They also tend to notice when someone doesn't fit in." Is that a threat? A friendly warning, Blackwood tipped his hat. "Welcome to Silver Creek." He turned his horse and rode away, his 2 men following close behind. Eli watched them until they disappeared over the ridge, then went back inside. Clara was standing in the doorway to the bedroom, her face pale. "He knows," she said. "He knows I'm here." "He suspects. He don't know for certain." "It doesn't matter. He'll come back. He'll come back with a sheriff and a warrant, and he'll—" "Clara." Eli crossed the room and put his hands on her shoulders. "Look at me." She met his eyes, and he could see the fear there, raw and desperate and barely contained. "I ain't gonna let him take you," Eli said quietly. "I don't care who he is or what power he has. You're safe here. I give you my word." "You can't promise that. You can't—" "I just did." Clara stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, the fear in her eyes began to shift into something else, something that looked almost like hope. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Eli thought about the question. He thought about the boy he'd killed in Texas, the nightmares that still haunted him, the guilt that had driven him to sell everything he owned and start over in a place where no one knew his name. Maybe I'm tired of watching bad men win, he said finally. Maybe I'm tired of being the one who walks away. Clara reached up and touched his face, a gentle, wondering touch, like she was trying to convince herself he was real. You're not like anyone I've ever met, she said softly. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. A small smile crossed her face. But I think I'd like to find out. The next few days passed in a tense calm. Eli kept watch, rarely sleeping more than a few hours at a time. Clara grew stronger, the color returning to her face as she ate regular meals and slept in a real bed. They fell into a rhythm. Clara helped with the cooking and cleaning, insisting that she needed to do something useful. Eli worked on the ranch during the day, always keeping his rifle within reach. In the evenings they talked. Clara told him about her life before, her childhood in Boston, her marriage to Thomas, the dreams she'd had of starting a family that had never come true. We tried for years, she said one night, staring into the fire. But I could never... And then Thomas got sick, and it didn't matter anymore. I'm sorry, Eli said. Clara shook her head. Don't be. I had 10 good years with him. That's more than some people get in a lifetime. She looked at him with those green eyes, and Eli felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. What about you? Clara asked. Have you ever been married? No. Why not? Eli was quiet for a long moment. I wasn't the marrying kind. My job, it didn't leave room for a family. But you're not doing that job anymore. No, I'm not. Clara tilted her head, studying him. What happened, Eli? What made you leave? He could have told her it was none of her business. He could have changed the subject, deflected with a joke or a question of his own. But something in her eyes made him want to tell the truth. I killed a boy, he said quietly. 15 years old. He was riding with a gang of outlaws, and we tracked them to a farmhouse outside of Austin. When the shooting started, he came at me with a gun. I didn't think. I just reacted. His voice caught, and he had to stop for a moment. He died in my arms, Eli continued. He was crying for his mother, and I just kept thinking, what if someone had helped him? What if someone had reached out to him before he ended up with those outlaws? Maybe he'd still be alive. Maybe I wouldn't have his blood on my hands. Clara reached out and took his hand. She didn't say anything. She just held on, letting him know she was there. That's why you helped me, she said finally. Isn't it? Because you couldn't help him. Eli looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt the tight knot in his chest begin to loosen. Maybe, he admitted. Or maybe I just couldn't stand to hear another person crying out for help and do nothing about it. Clara squeezed his hand. You're a good man, Eli McAllister. Whatever happened in Texas, whatever you think you did wrong, you're a good man. Eli wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to believe her. We should get some sleep, he said, pulling his hand back gently. Blackwood's been quiet too long. Something's coming. Clara nodded, but she didn't move right away. She just sat there, looking at him with those green eyes that seemed to see right through to his soul. Eli? Yes? Whatever happens, I'm glad you found me. I'm glad I'm not alone anymore. Eli felt his heart hammer in his chest. So am I.
The peace shattered 3 days later. Eli was in the barn, working on a broken harness, when he heard horses approaching. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, expecting to see Blackwood again. Instead, he saw the sheriff. Sheriff Tom Hartley was a big man, broad-shouldered and thick-necked, with a badge that gleamed on his chest. He was accompanied by 4 deputies, all of them armed. "Eli McAllister," Hartley called out. "That's me. I've got a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with kidnapping and assault." Eli felt the world tilt slightly. "Is that so? Judge Blackwood's sister-in-law went missing from his property a week ago. He has witnesses who saw you on his land the night she disappeared. I need you to put down that rifle and come with me." Clara appeared in the doorway of the house. "That's a lie. He didn't kidnap me. He saved me. Harlan locked me in a cellar for 3 weeks." Hartley's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, Judge Blackwood has medical documentation showing you suffer from delusions. I'm afraid your testimony isn't going to carry much weight." "This is insane. I'm standing right here telling you what happened." "Clara," Eli's voice was calm. "Go back inside." "No, I won't let them—" "Go back inside, please." Something in his tone made her stop. She looked at him, her eyes wild with fear and anger, and he tried to tell her with his expression that everything was going to be okay. He wasn't sure he believed it himself. Clara retreated into the house, and Eli turned back to the sheriff. "I ain't gonna fight you," he said, setting down his rifle. "But I want you to know, that woman is telling the truth. Blackwood had her locked in a cellar like an animal. I found her half-starved and barely alive." "That's for the courts to decide," Hartley said. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Eli did as he was told. As the sheriff's deputy cuffed him, he looked toward the house one more time. Clara was standing in the window, her hand pressed against the glass. Tears were streaming down her face. "I'll come back," Eli thought. "I promise you, Clara. I'll come back." He just hoped it was a promise he could keep. The jail cell in Silver Creek was small and dark, with iron bars that had rusted from years of mountain winters. Eli sat on the narrow cot, his back against the cold stone wall, counting the hours by the movement of shadows across the floor. 2 days. He'd been locked up for 2 days, and nobody had come to see him except the deputy who brought his meals. He kept thinking about Clara, alone in his house, unprotected. Blackwood could ride up there any time he wanted, and there wasn't a damn thing Eli could do about it. The door to the jail office creaked open, and Eli heard voices. One of them made his blood run cold. "I appreciate you keeping him secure, Sheriff." Harlan Blackwood's smooth voice carried through the bars. "A man like that, you can't be too careful." "He hasn't given us any trouble," Hartley said. "Quiet as a church mouse since we brought him in." "The dangerous ones always are." Blackwood's footsteps approached the cell. "May I have a moment alone with the prisoner?" "Judge, I don't think that's—" "Just a moment, Tom. Professional courtesy." There was a pause, then the sound of the sheriff's boots retreating. A door closed, and suddenly Blackwood was standing in front of Eli's cell, his hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting livestock. "Mr. McAllister." Blackwood smiled, but his eyes were flat and cold. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Eli didn't move from the cot. "I know who you are." "Do you? I wonder." Blackwood stepped closer to the bars. "You see, I'm a reasonable man. I don't enjoy conflict. I prefer to resolve matters quietly, without all this unpleasantness." "Is that what you call locking a woman in a cellar for 3 weeks? Resolving matters quietly?" Blackwood's smile didn't waver. "Clara is a troubled woman. She has been since my brother's death. I've tried to help her, truly I have, but she refuses to accept that she needs care. She don't need care. She needs to be left alone. And what would you know about what she needs? Blackwood's voice hardened slightly. You've known her for what, a week? I've known her for 10 years. I watched her marry my brother. I watched her fail to give him children. I watched her drive him to an early grave with her demands and her hysteria. Eli stood up slowly, his hands clenching into fists. That ain't the story she tells. Of course it isn't. The mad never think they're mad. Blackwood leaned closer, lowering his voice. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. McAllister. You're going to tell the sheriff that you made a mistake. You found Clara wandering on your property, confused and disoriented, and you tried to help her. But you realize now that she belongs in my care. You'll drop any claims against me, and in return, I'll drop the kidnapping charges. And if I don't, then you'll hang. Blackwood said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. Kidnapping is a serious crime in Colorado, and when Clara is returned to my custody, which she will be, I'll make sure she testifies that you held her against her will, did unspeakable things to her. By the time I'm done, this whole county will be calling for your neck. Eli felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear. Something harder than that. You really think you can get away with this? I've gotten away with far worse. Blackwood stepped back from the bars, adjusting his coat. You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision. After that, my generous offer expires. He turned and walked out without looking back. Eli stood there for a long moment, his mind racing. Then he sat back down on the cot and started to plan. Clara hadn't slept since they took Eli away. She paced the floors of his small ranch house, jumping at every sound, watching the road for any sign of riders. She knew Harlan would come for her. It was only a matter of time. On the second night, she heard hoofbeats. Clara grabbed the rifle Eli had shown her how to use and pressed herself against the wall beside the window. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the weapon steady. The hoofbeats stopped. Someone dismounted. A knock at the door. Mrs. Thornton? A woman's voice. Mrs. Thornton, my name is Henrietta Price. I run the saloon in town. I need to talk to you. Clara didn't move. How do I know Blackwood didn't send you? Because if Blackwood knew I was here, he'd have me run out of town by morning. There was a pause. Please, ma'am, I ain't got much time. I came to warn you. Clara hesitated, then slowly opened the door. The woman standing on the porch was younger than Clara expected, maybe late 20s, with red hair pinned up under a practical bonnet. Her dress was simple but clean, and her eyes were sharp and knowing. May I come in? Clara stepped back, keeping the rifle ready. Talk fast. Henrietta moved into the house and closed the door behind her. Blackwood's planning to come for you tomorrow. He's got a doctor from Denver arriving on the morning train. Some quack who'll sign whatever papers Blackwood puts in front of him. They're going to declare you incompetent and have you committed to an asylum. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. An asylum? It's what he does. Henrietta's voice was bitter. You ain't the first woman Blackwood's tried to get rid of. My sister married one of his business partners 5 years ago. When she tried to leave him, Blackwood had her locked up in a place outside Denver. She died there 6 months later. They said it was pneumonia, but I know better. Oh, God. Clara sank into a chair, the rifle slipping from her fingers. Oh, God. Listen to me. Henrietta knelt in front of her, grabbing her hands. You got one chance. There's a lawyer in town, woman named Catherine Mills. She's the only person in this county Blackwood ain't got in his pocket. You go to her first thing tomorrow morning, before that train gets in, and you tell her everything." "Why are you helping me?" Henrietta's jaw tightened. "Because I couldn't help my sister, and I'll be damned if I watch another woman get destroyed by that monster." Clara looked into Henrietta's eyes and saw the same fear and determination she felt in her own heart. "What about Eli?" she asked. "The man they arrested. He saved my life." "I know. Word travels fast in the small town." Henrietta stood up. "Catherine might be able to help him too, but you got to get to her first. You understand? First thing tomorrow. Don't wait." Clara nodded. "I understand." Henrietta moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Don't trust the sheriff. He's been in Blackwood's pocket for years. And whatever you do, don't let them get you alone with that doctor. Once he signs those papers, it's over." She slipped out into the darkness, and Clara heard her horse galloping away. Clara didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't fear keeping her awake. It was planning. She was waiting outside Catherine Mill's office when the sun came up. The lawyer arrived at 7 o'clock, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, with gray streaking through her dark hair. She took one look at Clara standing on her doorstep and raised an eyebrow. "You're the woman from the cellar," she said. "Come inside." Clara followed her into a small office lined with law books. Catherine closed the door and turned to face her. "Talk," she said. "Tell me everything." Clara talked. She told Catherine about Thomas, about Harlan, about the cellar and the starvation, and the endless days in darkness. She told her about Eli finding her, about the sheriff's arrest, about Henrietta's warning. Catherine listened without interrupting. When Clara finally finished, the lawyer was quiet for a long moment. "Blackwood's a snake," Catherine said finally. "I've been trying to catch him for years, but he's careful. He never leaves evidence, and the people he hurts are always too scared to testify." "I'm not scared anymore." Clara's voice was steady. "I'm angry." Catherine smiled, a thin, sharp smile that reminded Clara of a blade being drawn. "Good. Anger I can work with." She sat down at her desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. "First thing we need to do is get your testimony on record. Official, witnessed, notarized. Blackwood can claim you're crazy all he wants, but if we have documentation of your accusations before his pet doctor arrives, it becomes a lot harder to make this all disappear." "What about Eli? Can you help him?" "One thing at a time." Catherine dipped her pen in ink. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Clara talked for 2 hours. Catherine wrote down every word. They were just finishing when the door burst open. Sheriff Hartley stood in the doorway, 2 deputies behind him. His face was red with anger. "Clara Thornton," he said, "you need to come with me." "On what grounds?" Catherine was on her feet instantly, putting herself between Clara and the sheriff. "This woman is my client. She has a legal right to counsel. Judge Blackwood has filed an emergency petition to have her placed in protective custody. Dr. Morrison from Denver has examined the evidence and determined she's a danger to herself and others." "Doctor, Morrison hasn't examined anything except the inside of Blackwood's wallet." Catherine's voice was ice. "You can't remove my client without a proper hearing." "The hearing's scheduled for this afternoon. Until then, she's to be held in custody for her own protection." "This is outrageous." "Step aside, Miss Mills, or I'll arrest you for obstruction." Clara felt the world closing in around her. This was it. This was how it ended. Blackwood had won, just like he always won, and there was nothing she could do about it. Then she thought about Eli, sitting in that jail cell because he'd tried to help her, facing the noose because he'd refused to look the other way. She thought about the cellar, the darkness, the slow creep of death. She thought about all the women Blackwood had destroyed before her. No. The word came out quiet, but it stopped everyone cold. Clara stepped forward, past Catherine, until she was standing face to face with the sheriff. I said, "No, I'm not going with you." "Ma'am, you don't have a choice." "I have a choice. I've always had a choice. That's what men like you and Blackwood can't understand." Clara's voice grew stronger with every word. "You think you can make me disappear. You think you can lock me away and pretend I never existed. But I'm not going to let you. I'm going to fight you with everything I have. And when this is over, the whole world is going to know what Harlan Blackwood really is." Hartley's face darkened. "Grab her." The deputies moved forward. "Touch her, and I'll have you both up on assault charges." Catherine's voice cracked like a whip. "I have 3 witnesses across the street who watched you enter my office. Whatever happens in here, it's going on record." The deputies hesitated, looking at Hartley. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the sheriff let out a harsh breath. "Fine. We'll do this the proper way. The hearing's at 2 o'clock. You and your client better be there, Miss Mills. If you're not, I'll issue a warrant." He turned and stormed out, his deputies following. Catherine closed the door and leaned against it, her composure finally cracking. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen," she said, "or the stupidest." Clara was shaking, but she managed a small smile. "Maybe both." "Probably both." Catherine straightened up and moved back to her desk. "We have 4 hours to prepare for that hearing. Blackwood's going to throw everything he has at us. Are you ready for that?" Clara thought about Eli, about his gray eyes and his steady voice, and the way he'd promised to protect her. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's destroy him." The hearing was held in the Silver Creek Courthouse, a 2-story building that served as the center of what passed for law and order in the county. By the time Clara arrived with Catherine, half the town had turned out to watch. Clara saw Henrietta in the crowd, her red hair bright against the sea of brown and gray bonnets. The saloon owner gave her a small nod of encouragement. Judge Blackwood sat at the front of the room, but he wasn't presiding. He'd had the sense to recuse himself from his own petition. Instead, a visiting judge from the next county sat at the bench, a thin man with spectacles and a nervous disposition. And there, in the front row, sat a small, pale man with a doctor's bag at his feet. Dr. Morrison, the man Blackwood had brought to sign her life away. Clara took her seat at the defendant's table and forced herself to breathe. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge William Patterson presiding." The hearing began. Blackwood's lawyer, a slick man from Denver with an expensive suit and a condescending smile, presented his case first. He called Dr. Morrison to the stand, and the doctor testified that Clara showed clear signs of hysteria, delusion, and emotional instability. "In your professional opinion," the lawyer asked, "is Mrs. Thornton capable of managing her own affairs?" "Absolutely not." Morrison didn't even look at Clara. "She requires immediate institutionalization for her own safety and the safety of those around her." "Have you examined Mrs. Thornton personally?" "I reviewed the extensive documentation provided by Judge Blackwood, including statements from doctors who treated her during her marriage. The pattern of behavior is unmistakable." Clara gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. When it was Catherine's turn, she stood slowly, adjusting her spectacles with deliberate calm. "Dr. Morrison," she said, "you stated that you reviewed documentation. But have you actually examined my client?" Morrison shifted in his seat. "I reviewed, yes or no, doctor. Have you personally examined Clara Thornton?" "No, but—" "So you're basing your professional opinion on documents provided by the man who stands to inherit my client's fortune if she's declared incompetent. Is that correct?" The documents were yes or no. Morrison's face reddened. Yes. A murmur ran through the crowd. Catherine turned to face the room. I'd like to call Clara Thornton to the stand. Clara's legs felt like water as she walked to the witness chair. She could feel every eye in the room on her. Curious, judgmental, waiting to see if she would break. She sat down and looked at Catherine. Mrs. Thornton, Catherine said gently, can you tell the court what happened to you on the night of July 15th of this year? Clara took a deep breath and began to talk. She told them about the cellar, about the darkness and the cold and the hunger, about the rats that came at night and the despair that ate at her soul, about crying out for help until her voice gave out, knowing nobody would come. She told them about Eli, about the sound of his voice calling down to her, the first human kindness she'd heard in weeks,
about how he'd carried her to safety and fed her and promised to protect her. She told them about Blackwood, about his threats and his manipulations and his cold, calculated cruelty. By the time she finished, half the women in the courtroom were crying. Even Judge Patterson looked shaken. Catherine turned to the bench. Your Honor, I move to dismiss this petition. There is no evidence of mental illness here, only evidence of a systematic campaign of abuse by a man who wants to steal my client's inheritance. Blackwood's lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid delusion. I also have a sworn statement, Catherine continued, pulling a document from her bag, from Mr. Elijah McAllister, currently held in the Silver Creek jail. Mr. McAllister describes in detail the condition in which he found Mrs. Thornton, malnourished, dehydrated, and showing clear signs of prolonged imprisonment. I have a second statement from Henrietta Price, a respected business owner in this community, corroborating Mrs. Thornton's claims about Judge Blackwood's history of similar abuse. The murmur in the courtroom grew louder. Judge Patterson banged his gavel. Order! Order in the court! Clara looked across the room and found Blackwood's eyes. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw fear there. Good. Your Honor, Catherine said, I move not only to dismiss this petition, but to file criminal charges against Harlan Blackwood for unlawful imprisonment, assault, and attempted murder. The courtroom erupted. Patterson banged his gavel again, but it was several minutes before order was restored. When it was, he removed his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. This is highly irregular, he said. I'm going to need time to review all of this evidence. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. Your Honor, my client will remain free pending my decision. She is not to leave Silver Creek. Patterson looked at Blackwood's lawyer. And I'm ordering Sheriff Hartley to release Mr. McAllister immediately. If Mrs. Thornton's account is accurate, he should never have been arrested in the first place. Clara felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't care. She didn't care about anything except the words she'd just heard. Eli was going to be released. She was still free. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Harlan Blackwood was the one running scared. The sun was setting by the time Clara reached the jail. She'd run most of the way from the courthouse, ignoring Catherine's calls to wait, ignoring the stares of the townspeople, ignoring everything except the desperate need to see Eli's face. Sheriff Hartley met her at the door, his expression sour. He's being processed, Hartley said. You can wait outside. I'll wait inside. Ma'am, I said I'll wait inside. Something in her voice must have told Hartley this wasn't an argument he was going to win. He stepped aside and let her pass. Eli was standing in the jail office, signing papers. He looked up when she entered, and his face transformed. Clara. She crossed the room in 3 steps and threw her arms around him. He caught her, holding her tight, his face buried in her hair. You're okay, he breathed. Thank God. You're okay. I'm okay,
Clara pulled back just enough to look at his face. "I'm okay because of you. Because you believed me. Because you didn't give up." "I told you I'd come back." "You did." Clara felt tears threatening again. "You did." Hartley cleared his throat. "If you two are done, I need Mr. McAllister to finish signing these release forms." Eli signed the papers without taking his eyes off Clara. When he was done, he took her hand. "Let's get out of here." They walked out of the jail together, into the fading light of the Colorado evening. Clara felt like she could finally breathe for the first time in months. "What happened in that courtroom?" Eli asked. "The sheriff said something about criminal charges against Blackwood." Clara told him everything. About Catherine, about the hearing, about watching Blackwood's mask finally crack. "It ain't over yet," Eli said when she finished. "The judge hasn't made his ruling. Blackwood's still got power in this town." "I know. But we hurt him today. We hurt him bad." Clara squeezed his hand. "And tomorrow, we're going to finish it." Eli stopped walking and turned to face her. In the last light of the sunset, his gray eyes were warm and soft. "You're something else, Clara Thornton," he said quietly. "You know that?" "I'm just a woman who's tired of being afraid." "No." Eli reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're so much more than that. You're brave and strong, and you don't give up, even when everything's stacked against you." "I ain't never met anyone like you." Clara felt her heart hammering in her chest. "Eli, I know this ain't the time. I know we got Blackwood to deal with and a whole mess of trouble ahead of us. But I need you to know something." He took a deep breath. "When I was sitting in that cell, all I could think about was you. Not the charges against me, not what Blackwood might do. Just you. Whether you were safe. Whether I'd ever see you again." "I was thinking about you too," Clara whispered. "Every minute. Every hour. Clara, The sound of a gunshot shattered the evening air. Eli moved without thinking, pulling Clara behind him, his hand going to the gun that wasn't there. They hadn't returned his weapon yet. A second shot rang out, closer this time. "Get down!" Eli pushed Clara toward the ground, covering her body with his own. More shots, screaming, the thunder of hooves. Then silence. Eli lifted his head carefully. In the middle of the street, a horse lay dead. Beside it, a man in an expensive coat was crawling through the dirt, blood spreading from a wound in his shoulder. Harlan Blackwood. Standing over him, rifle in hand, was Henrietta Price. Her face was pale but set, her hands steady on the weapon. "That's for my sister," she said, "and for every other woman you destroyed." Blackwood looked up at her, his face twisted with pain and rage. "You'll hang for this." "Maybe." Henrietta's voice was cold. "But it'll be worth it." People were starting to emerge from buildings now, drawn by the gunfire. Clara heard someone shout for the doctor. Someone else was running toward the sheriff's office. She looked at Eli, and he looked back at her, and neither of them could quite believe what had just happened. "Well," Clara said finally, her voice shaking, "I guess the hearing tomorrow is going to be interesting." Eli let out a laugh that was half relief, half disbelief. Then he pulled her close and held her like he was never going to let go. And standing there in the street, with chaos swirling around them and the future more uncertain than ever, Clara realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, she and Eli would face it together. The doctor worked on Blackwood for 3 hours, while the whole town waited. Clara sat on a bench outside the sheriff's office, Eli beside her. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. Everything depended on whether Harlan Blackwood lived or died, and that was out of their hands now. Inside the jail, Henrietta Price sat in the same cell Eli had occupied just hours before. Clara could hear her humming softly through the barred window, an old hymn, steady and calm. She knew what she was doing, Eli said quietly. She knew she'd hang for it. She didn't care. Clara's voice was hollow. She wanted justice for her sister, even if it cost her everything. The door to the doctor's office opened, and Catherine Mills stepped out. Her face was grim.
"He's alive," she said. "Bullet went through his shoulder. He'll recover."
Clara didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. "What happens now?" Eli asked. "Now it gets complicated." Catherine sat down on the bench across from them. "Henrietta's going to be charged with attempted murder. Blackwood's lawyers are already on their way from Denver. And the judge has postponed the hearing indefinitely." "So Blackwood wins." Clara felt the hope draining out of her. "He survives and everything goes back to the way it was." "Not necessarily." Catherine's eyes sharpened. "Henrietta's testimony could be powerful. If she tells the court what Blackwood did to her sister, if she explains why she shot him, they'll still hang her," Eli said flatly. "Doesn't matter why she did it. She shot an unarmed man in the street. That's murder in any court in the territory." Catherine was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up. "Get some rest, both of you. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She walked away, leaving Clara and Eli alone in the darkness. "We should go back to the ranch," Eli said. "It ain't safe for you here." Clara shook her head. "I'm not leaving, not while Henrietta's in that cell because of me." "Clara, she did this for me, Eli. She risked everything because she couldn't stand to watch another woman get destroyed by that man. I won't abandon her." Eli looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, we stay." They spent the night on that bench, sleeping in shifts, keeping watch. Eli's hand never left his gun. The sheriff had finally returned his weapon. And Clara's eyes never stopped scanning the shadows. Blackwood had survived. That meant he'd be coming for them. It was just a matter of time. Morning came gray and cold, unusual for August. Clara woke to find Eli already on his feet, talking in low voices with a man she didn't recognize. "Clara," Eli turned to her.
"This is Reverend Thomas Whitfield. He runs the church on the edge of town." The Reverend was an older black man, maybe 65, with kind eyes and a face lined by years of hard living. He took Clara's hand gently. "I heard what happened, Mrs. Thornton, what you've been through." His voice was deep and warm. "I want you to know that not everyone in this town is on Blackwood's side. There are good people here who see him for what he is." "Then why hasn't anyone stopped him?" Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. The Reverend didn't flinch. "Fear. The same thing that kept you silent for 2 years. The same thing that keeps all of us silent when we should speak." He paused. "But sometimes, one brave voice is all it takes to break that silence. You were that voice yesterday, and now others are ready to join you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there are people who want to testify against Blackwood. People with stories like yours, like Henrietta's sister. They've been too scared to come forward. But after what happened in that courtroom," Whitfield's eyes softened. "You gave them hope, Mrs. Thornton. You showed them it's possible to fight back." Clara felt tears pricking at her eyes. "How many people?" "7 so far. Maybe more by the end of the day." 7. 7 other victims who had suffered at Blackwood's hands. 7 other stories of cruelty and abuse and silence. "Will you help us, Reverend?" Eli asked. Whitfield nodded slowly. "I'll do more than help. I'll stand with you, whatever happens." The morning passed in a blur of activity.
Catherine Mills arrived with stacks of documents, and she and Whitfield began coordinating with the witnesses who would come forward. More people trickled in as word spread. Women with haunted eyes, men who had lost businesses to Blackwood's schemes, families who had been driven out of their homes. Clara listened to their stories, one after another, and felt her resolve hardening into something like steel. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone Blackwood had ever hurt. Around noon, the sheriff appeared. "Judge Patterson wants to see you all," Hartley said. His voice was different now, less hostile, more uncertain. "In his chambers, immediately." Clara looked at Catherine. "It's time," the lawyer said. "Let's go." Judge Patterson's chambers were cramped and cluttered, barely big enough to hold everyone who needed to be there. Clara stood between Eli and Catherine, facing the judge across his desk. Blackwood was there too, his arm in a sling, his face pale but his eyes burning with fury. His lawyers flanked him like guard dogs. "I've reviewed the evidence," Patterson said. "All of it, including the new testimony that's been submitted this morning." Blackwood's lead lawyer stepped forward. "Your Honor, this so-called testimony is nothing but hearsay and—" "I'll decide what it is, Mr. Crawford." Patterson's voice was cold. "Sit down." The lawyer sat. Patterson removed his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. He looked tired, Clara thought. Tired and troubled. "In my 30 years on the bench," he said slowly, "I've never seen anything like this. 7 sworn statements, all describing similar patterns of abuse, financial manipulation, unlawful imprisonment, intimidation, and in at least 2 cases, what appears to be involuntary commitment to mental institutions." He looked directly at Blackwood. "Judge Blackwood, you have been a respected member of this community for 20 years. But the evidence before me suggests that respect was built on a foundation of fear and silence." "This is outrageous," Blackwood snarled. "These people are liars. They're being manipulated by that woman," he pointed at Clara. "She's the one who should be on trial here, not me." "Harlan," Patterson's voice was sharp, "I'm speaking." Blackwood's jaw clenched, but he fell silent. "Based on the evidence presented," Patterson continued, "I'm dismissing the petition for protective custody of Clara Thornton. Furthermore, I'm recommending to the territorial prosecutor that criminal charges be filed against Harlan Blackwood for unlawful imprisonment, assault, fraud, and conspiracy." Clara felt her knees go weak. Eli's hand found hers and squeezed. "As for the matter of Henrietta Price," Patterson went on, "I'm reducing the charge from attempted murder to assault with a deadly weapon, based on the extenuating circumstances of her sister's death. She will still face trial, but the sentence, if convicted, will be significantly less severe." "Your Honor, this is a travesty of justice!" Blackwood's lawyer was on his feet again. "My client is a respected judge, a pillar of this community. Your client is a monster." Patterson's voice cracked like a whip. "And I should have seen it years ago. We all should have." He stood up. "This hearing is concluded. Sheriff Hartley, please escort Judge Blackwood to the jail. He's under arrest." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Blackwood laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound, and it made Clara's blood run cold. "You think this is over?" Blackwood's voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like poison. "You think you've won?" He looked at Clara, and the hatred in his eyes was absolute. "I have friends in Denver, friends in Washington, judges, senators, men with real power. By the time I'm done, every person in this room will be destroyed. Your careers, your families, your lives. I'll burn it all to the ground." "Harlan," Patterson started. "And you." Blackwood's gaze fixed on Clara. "You should have died in that cellar. You were supposed to die. But since you didn't, I'll make sure you wish you had. Every day for the rest of your miserable life, you'll wish you had just given up and died like you were supposed to." Eli stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and Blackwood. "That's enough," he said quietly. "Or what, cowboy? You'll shoot me? Go ahead. It won't change anything. I own this territory. I own the law, and there's nothing any of you can do about it." Eli didn't respond. He just stood there, solid and unmoving, a wall between Clara and the man who wanted to destroy her. Sheriff Hartley stepped forward and took Blackwood's arm. "Come on, Judge. Let's go." Blackwood let himself be led away, but his eyes never left Clara's face. Even as the door closed behind him, she could feel the weight of his hatred pressing down on her. "He meant it," she said quietly. "Every word." "I know." Eli's voice was grim. "That's why we need to end this. Permanently." Catherine approached them, her face troubled. "He's right about one thing. He does have powerful friends. If this goes to trial, there's no guarantee we'll win. And even if we do, his connections could get him out in a few years. Maybe less." "So what do we do?" Clara asked. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Eli. "There might be one way to protect Clara permanently, but it's unconventional. Tell me." "Colorado law says that a woman's property becomes her husband's upon marriage. If Blackwood's claim is based on taking control of Clara's inheritance, he loses all legal standing the moment she marries someone else." Clara felt her face flush. I'm suggesting that if you two were to marry, Blackwood would have no more power over you. Your property would belong to your husband, not your brother-in-law. He'd have no grounds for any claim." The room went very quiet. Eli turned to look at Clara, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite read. "Clara," he said slowly, "I know this ain't how it's supposed to happen. I know we barely know each other, but—" "Yes." The word came out before Clara could think about it. "Yes?" Eli's voice was uncertain. "Yes." Clara took a step toward him. "I'll marry you. Not because of Blackwood, not because of the money. Because when I was in that cellar, dying in the dark, you were the one who came for me. You were the one who didn't walk away, and I—" Her voice caught. "I don't want to spend another day without you." Eli stared at her for a long moment. Then a smile broke across his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Well," he said, "I reckon that's settled then." Reverend Whitfield performed the ceremony that evening in the small church on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy. Clara wore a simple dress borrowed from Henrietta's sister-in-law. Eli wore his cleanest shirt, which still had dust on the collar. The only witnesses were Catherine, Whitfield's wife, and a handful of the townspeople who had come forward to testify against Blackwood. But when Eli slipped the ring on Clara's finger, a plain gold band he'd bought from the general store an hour before, and when he looked into her eyes and said, "I do," Clara felt something shift inside her. For the first time in years, she felt whole. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Whitfield said. "You may kiss the bride." Eli cupped her face in his hands, gentle as if she were made of glass. "I love you, Clara McAllister," he said softly. "I love you too," she whispered back. And when he kissed her, Clara felt all the fear and pain and darkness of the last 2 years begin to fade away. The wedding night was interrupted by gunfire. Clara and Eli were in the small house Whitfield had offered them for the night when the shots rang out. 3 of them, in quick succession, coming from the direction of the jail. Eli grabbed his rifle and was out the door before Clara could say a word. She followed him, her heart pounding. The street was chaos. People running, shouting, someone screaming for the doctor. A horse lay dead in front of the jail, and the front door was hanging off its hinges. Sheriff Hartley stumbled out of the building, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "What happened?" Eli demanded. "Blackwood's men." Hartley's voice was dazed. "4 of them. They came out of nowhere. Broke him out." Clara felt the world tilt. "He escaped?" "They killed Deputy Morrison. Shot him right through the heart." Hartley sank to his knees. "God forgive me. I should have seen it coming." Eli was already scanning the darkness, his rifle ready. "Which way did they go?" "East, toward the mountains." "How long ago?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. Eli turned to Clara. His face was hard, his eyes cold. "Stay here," he said. "Stay with Whitfield. Don't leave his sight." "Eli, no, you can't." "I have to." He took her hands. "Clara, listen to me. As long as Blackwood's alive, you'll never be safe. He'll keep coming. He'll never stop. I have to end this." "Then I'm coming with you." "No. I'm not letting you face him alone." Eli pulled her close, his arms tight around her. "I spent 8 years hunting men like Blackwood," he said quietly. "This is what I was trained to do. But I can't do it if I'm worried about you. I need to know you're safe. Please, Clara. Trust me." Clara wanted to argue. She wanted to scream and fight and refuse to let him go. But she looked into his eyes and saw something there that stopped her. This was who he was. A protector. A hunter. A man who couldn't walk away from evil, no matter the cost. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise." He kissed her once, hard and desperate. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness like he'd been born to it. Clara stood in the street, watching until she couldn't see him anymore. Then she went to find Catherine Mills. "I need a gun," Clara said. Catherine stared at her.
"Clara, what? Eli's going after Blackwood. Alone. I'm not going to sit here and wait to find out if he lives or dies."
"He told you to stay here."
"I know what he told me." Clara's voice was steady. "But Blackwood isn't just Eli's fight. He's mine too. He locked me in that cellar. He tried to destroy my life. I have a right to face him."
Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small revolver. "Do you know how to use this?"
"Eli showed me."
"Then God help us all." Catherine pressed the gun into Clara's hands. "The east road leads up into the mountains. There's an old mining camp about 5 miles out. If I were Blackwood, that's where I'd go." Clara tucked the gun into her belt. "Thank you." "Clara," Catherine's voice stopped her at the door. "Be careful. Whatever happens up there, be careful." Clara nodded once. Then she was gone.
She found a horse tied behind the general store, probably belonged to one of Blackwood's men, and rode east into the mountains. The trail was rough, barely visible in the moonlight, but Clara pushed forward. Every instinct she had told her to turn back, to hide, to let someone else handle this. But she was done hiding. She was done being the victim. Tonight, she would face Harlan Blackwood, and one way or another, it would end. She heard the shots before she saw the mining camp, 2 of them, echoing off the mountain walls. Then a third. Clara dismounted and tied the horse to a tree, then moved forward on foot, the revolver heavy in her hand. The camp was a collection of abandoned buildings, their wooden walls rotting and their roofs half collapsed. Lantern light flickered from the largest structure, what had probably been the foreman's office. Clara crept closer, staying in the shadows. Through a broken window she could see them. Eli was on his knees in the center of the room, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. 2 of Blackwood's men stood over him, their guns drawn.
and Blackwood himself stood by the door, a pistol in his hand, watching with cold satisfaction. "You should have stayed out of this, cowboy," Blackwood was saying. "You could have had a nice, quiet life on your little ranch. But you had to play hero. You had to save the damsel in distress." "She ain't a damsel." Eli's voice was steady despite the blood. "She's the strongest person I've ever known." "She's a means to an end." Blackwood raised his pistol. "And you're a loose end that needs to be tied up." Clara didn't think. She just acted. She stepped through the doorway, her revolver raised. "Put the gun down, Harlan." Every head in the room turned toward her. Blackwood's face twisted with shock, then rage. "You." He swung his pistol toward her. "You should be dead. You should have died months ago." "But I didn't." Clara's hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "And now it's over. Drop the gun." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" Blackwood laughed. "You don't have the nerve. You're nothing but a weak, pathetic—" Clara pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Blackwood in the leg, and he went down with a scream. His pistol skittered across the floor. The two men guarding Eli hesitated, shocked by what they'd just seen. That hesitation was all Eli needed. He lunged forward, grabbing one man's gun arm and twisting. The weapon discharged into the ceiling. Eli drove his elbow into the man's throat, and he dropped. The second man raised his pistol, but Clara was faster. Her second shot took him in the shoulder. He stumbled backward, crashed through the rotted wall, and didn't get up. Suddenly, it was quiet. Blackwood lay on the floor, clutching his bleeding leg, his face contorted with pain and hatred. Eli got to his feet slowly, wincing. He looked at Clara, and something like awe crossed his face. "Clara, are you okay?" She moved to his side, her eyes scanning him for injuries. "How bad is it?" "I'll live." He touched her face gently. "You came." "Of course I came." Her voice broke. "I told you, I'm not letting you face him alone." A sound from the floor drew their attention. Blackwood was laughing. It was a wet, ugly sound, mixed with groans of pain. "You think you've won," he said. "You think this changes anything. But you're wrong. I have powerful friends. They'll come for you. Both of you. You'll never be safe. Never." Eli picked up Blackwood's fallen pistol and walked over to where the man lay. "You're right about one thing," Eli said quietly. "As long as you're alive, Clara will never be safe." He raised the gun. "Eli, no!" Clara's voice stopped him. "Don't!" "Clara, he'll never stop. You know that." "I know." She walked over and put her hand on his arm, gently lowering the weapon. "But if you kill him like this, you'll be no better than he is. And I didn't marry a murderer. I married a good man." Eli looked at her, his jaw tight. "He deserves to die." "Maybe, but that's not your call to make." Clara knelt down beside Blackwood, looking into his hate-filled eyes. "You're going to prison, Harlan, for a very long time. And every day you spend in that cell, you're going to remember that a weak, pathetic woman is the one who put you there." Blackwood spat at her. Clara didn't flinch. "Come on," she said, standing up. "Let's get him back to town. Let the law handle it from here." Eli stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You're something else, Clara McAllister," he said. "You know that?" "So you keep telling me." They brought Blackwood back to Silver Creek just as the sun was rising. The whole town turned out to watch as Sheriff Hartley, his head bandaged but his spirit intact, took custody of the man who had terrorized them for so long. Clara stood beside Eli, his arm around her shoulders, and watched as Blackwood was loaded into a wagon for transport to the territorial prison. "Is it really over?" she asked, quietly. "It's over." Eli pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "He'll never hurt you again. I swear it." Clara leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. For the first time in years, she believed it. It was really over. And her new life was just beginning. The weeks after Blackwood's arrest passed in a blur of legal proceedings and rebuilding. Clara testified 3 more times, each session dragging up memories she would rather have buried. But she did it anyway, for Henrietta, for the other women who had come forward, for everyone Blackwood had ever hurt. Eli was there every time.
He sat in the back of the courtroom, his gray eyes steady on hers, reminding her that she wasn't alone. On the day the territorial judge sentenced Harlan Blackwood to 25 years in prison, Clara felt something break loose inside her chest. Not joy, exactly. Something quieter than that. Relief. Freedom. The knowledge that the nightmare was finally, truly over. "How do you feel?" Eli asked as they walked out of the courthouse. Clara considered the question. "Empty," she said finally. "I thought I'd feel happy, triumphant, but I just feel empty." "That's normal." Eli took her hand. "You spent 2 years fighting. Your body don't know what to do when the fight's over." "Does it ever get better?" "It does." He squeezed her fingers. "Took me a long time after I left the Rangers, but it gets better." They walked in silence for a moment. Then Clara stopped. "I want to go home," she said. "To the ranch. I want to start our life. Really start it." Eli smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached his eyes. "Then let's go home." The ranch felt different now. Clara noticed it the moment they rode up the drive. The same buildings, the same fences, the same stretch of Colorado sky. But something had shifted. It felt like possibility instead of survival, like a beginning instead of a hiding place. "What do you want to do first?" Eli asked as they dismounted. Clara looked around, at the house that needed repairs, at the barn that needed cleaning, at the land that stretched out in every direction, wild and waiting. "Everything," she said, and for the first time in months, she laughed. They worked from sunrise to sunset those first few weeks. Eli taught Clara how to mend fences and care for horses. Clara taught Eli how to cook something other than beans and hardtack. They fell into a rhythm, moving around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. At night, they sat on the porch and talked. About nothing, about everything, about the future they were building together. "I've been thinking," Clara said one evening, her head resting on Eli's shoulder. "About what?" "About what I want to do. With my life, I mean, now that I have one again." Eli was quiet, waiting. "When I was young, I wanted to be a nurse," Clara continued. "I trained for it, actually, during the war. I worked in a field hospital for 2 years. "You never told me that." "It was a long time ago." Clara's voice grew distant. "I saw things no one should ever see. When the war ended, I just wanted to forget. I married Thomas, and I tried to be a proper wife, and I buried all of it." "And now?" Clara sat up and looked at him. "There's no doctor in Silver Creek. The nearest one is 30 miles away. People here suffer because they can't get help. Children die from things that could be treated if someone knew how." "You want to open a clinic." "I want to help people." Clara's eyes were bright. "I want to use what I know to make a difference. Is that foolish?" Eli reached out and touched her face. "It's the least foolish thing I've ever heard." "Really?" "Clara, you're the bravest person I know. You survived things that would have broken anyone else. If you want to open a clinic, we'll open a clinic. I'll build it with my own 2 hands if I have to."
Clara felt tears threatening.
Why are you so good to me?
Because you deserve it. Eli pulled her close. Because I love you. Because I spent 38 years alone, and I don't want to spend another day without you. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and the tears fell anyway.
I love you too, she whispered. I love you so much, it scares me.
Don't be scared. Eli held her tighter. I ain't going anywhere. Word spread quickly that Clara McAllister was offering medical care. At first, it was just the people who had testified against Blackwood. They came with small ailments, minor injuries, things they'd been ignoring because the trip to the nearest doctor was too far and too expensive. Clara treated them all, setting up a small examination room in the spare bedroom of the ranch house. She cleaned wounds and set broken bones, and mixed remedies from herbs she grew in the garden behind the house. You're good at this, Eli said one evening, watching her wrap a bandage around a farmhand's sprained wrist. I had good teachers. Clara tied off the bandage and patted the young man's arm. Keep it elevated for a few days. Come back if the swelling doesn't go down. The farmhand thanked her profusely and pressed a few coins into her hand. Clara tried to refuse, but he insisted. You saved my job, ma'am. That wrist gets worse. I can't work. Can't work. I can't eat. You saved me. After he left, Clara stood in the doorway, looking at the coins in her palm. What's wrong? Eli asked. Nothing. Clara's voice was thick. It's just, I forgot what it felt like. To help someone. To matter. Eli put his arm around her. You've always mattered, Clara. You just forgot for a while. The patients kept coming. More and more of them, from all over the valley. Clara's reputation spread, and soon she was treating people she'd never met. People who had heard about the woman doctor out on the McAllister ranch. Henrietta was released from jail in September, her sentence reduced to time served after Catherine Mills argued that she had acted in defense of others. She showed up at the ranch the day after her release, looking thinner and paler than before, but with the same fire in her eyes. I came to thank you, Henrietta said, standing on the porch. What you did in that courtroom. You saved my life. You saved mine first. Clara pulled her into a hug. Come inside. You look like you haven't eaten in weeks. Over dinner, Henrietta told them about her plans. She was selling the saloon and moving to Denver. Too many memories here, she said. I need a fresh start. I understand that. Clara reached across the table and squeezed her hand. But you'll always have a place here, if you ever need anything. I know. Henrietta's eyes glistened. That's why I came, to tell you that. And to give you this. She pulled a folded document from her pocket and handed it to Clara. What is it? The deed to my sister's house, the one Blackwood took from her family after she died. I got it back during the trial. It's in town, close to the main street, big enough for a real clinic. Clara stared at the paper. Henrietta, I can't. You can, and you will. Henrietta's voice was firm. My sister would have wanted this. She always said the town needed a real doctor. Someone who cared about people, not just money. That's you, Clara. That's exactly you. Clara looked at Eli. He nodded slowly. Thank you, Clara whispered. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just help people. That's all the thanks I need. Henrietta left the next morning, heading east toward Denver. Clara stood on the porch and watched until the wagon disappeared over the horizon. You okay? Eli asked, coming to stand beside her. I'm thinking about all the people who helped us. Catherine, Reverend Whitfield, Henrietta, all those witnesses who came forward. Clara shook her head. We didn't do this alone. Nobody does anything alone. That's what community means. Clara turned to look at him.
I spent so long being afraid, hiding, keeping everyone at a distance because I thought it was safer that way. But it wasn't safer. It was just lonelier.
And now?
Now I want to be part of something. I want to build something, not just for us, but for everyone.
Eli smiled. Then that's what we'll do. The clinic opened in October, just as the first hints of autumn were creeping into the air. Clara had spent weeks preparing, cleaning, and renovating the old house, ordering supplies from Denver, setting up examination rooms and a small surgery. Eli had built the shelves and tables himself, working late into the night to make sure everything was perfect. The day they hung the sign above the door, Clara McAllister, Medical Services. Clara stood on the sidewalk and stared at it until her eyes blurred with tears. You did it, Eli said, his arm around her waist. We did it. Clara leaned into him. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sure you could have. He just would have been lonelier doing it. Clara laughed, wiping her eyes. When did you get so wise? About the time I met you. The clinic's first official patient was a 6-year-old girl with a broken arm. Her mother carried her in, terrified and apologizing for the trouble. She fell out of a tree, the mother said, her voice shaking.
I told her not to climb it, but she never listens, and now... It's all right.
Clara's voice was calm, soothing. Let me take a look. The break was clean, and Clara said it quickly, talking to the little girl the whole time to keep her distracted. When it was done and the arm was splinted and wrapped, the girl looked up at Clara with wide eyes. You're a lady doctor, she said. I am. I didn't know ladies could be doctors. Clara knelt down so she was eye level with the child. Ladies can be anything they want to be. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. The girl's mother started crying. Clara pretended not to notice, but Eli saw the tears in her own eyes as she handed over a small packet of willow bark tea for the pain. Come back in 2 weeks, Clara said. I'll check the healing. How much do I owe you? Whatever you can afford. The mother pressed a handful of coins into Clara's palm. Not much, but clearly all she had. Clara tried to give some back, but the woman shook her head. You treated my daughter like she mattered, she said. That's worth more than money. After they left, Clara sat down heavily in one of the chairs. Eli came over and knelt beside her. You okay? I keep thinking about all the years I wasted. Clara's voice was thick. All the people I could have helped if I hadn't been so afraid. You can't change the past, Clara. You can only change what comes next. I know. She took a deep breath. I know. It's just hard sometimes. It's supposed to be hard. That's how you know it matters. Clara looked at him, at this man who had pulled her out of darkness and refused to let go. How do you always know the right thing to say? I don't, Eli smiled. I just say what I feel and hope it comes out right. It always does. Clara leaned forward and kissed him. It always does. November brought the first snow, and with it, the first real test of their new life. A fever swept through Silver Creek, hitting the mining camps hardest. Men who had been healthy one day were bedridden the next, burning with fever and racked with chills. 3 died in the first week. Clara worked around the clock, riding out to the camps to treat patients who couldn't make it to town. Eli went with her, helping her carry supplies and holding lanterns while she worked through the night. You need to rest, he said after the 4th day. You're going to make yourself sick. I can't rest. People are dying. You won't help anyone if you collapse. Eli took her hands, forcing her to stop moving. Clara, look at me. She met his eyes. She was exhausted. He could see that. Her face was pale, her hands were shaking, and there were dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. 2 hours, Eli said firmly. You sleep for 2 hours, and then you can go back to work. That's not negotiable. Eli, I mean it, Clara. I didn't save you from that cellar just to watch you work yourself to death. Something in his voice broke through her resistance. Clara nodded slowly. 2 hours, she said. But if anyone comes, I'll wake you, I promise. She slept for 4 hours. Eli sat beside her the whole time, watching her breathe, thanking God for every rise and fall of her chest. The fever broke in mid-November. When it was over, 17 people had died, but dozens more had survived because of Clara's care. The mining company sent a letter of gratitude and a generous donation to the clinic. Families she had never met stopped her on the street to thank her. "You're a hero," Reverend Whitfield told her at Sunday service. "The whole town knows it." "I'm not a hero," Clara shook her head. "I'm just someone who couldn't stand by and do nothing." That's exactly what a hero is. December brought a different kind of challenge. Clara had been feeling unwell for weeks, tired all the time, nauseous in the mornings, unable to keep down her breakfast. She told herself it was just exhaustion from the fever outbreak. She told herself it would pass. But it didn't pass. And slowly, undeniably, she began to recognize the signs. She waited until she was sure before she told Eli. She had to be sure. After everything they'd been through, she couldn't give him false hope. "I need to tell you something," she said one evening after dinner. Eli looked up from the fire he was building, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Clara took a deep breath. "Eli, I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Eli stared at her. His face went through a dozen emotions in the space of a heartbeat. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like pure, overwhelming joy. "You're—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm going to have a baby. Our baby." Eli crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. He was trembling, she realized. This strong, steady man who had faced down outlaws and murderers was trembling. "I didn't think—" His voice broke. "Clara, I'm 38 years old. I never thought I'd have a family. I never thought anyone would want to—" "I want to." Clara pulled back to look at his face. "I want this. I want you. I want everything." "But you said you couldn't have children, that you and Thomas—" "I was wrong." Clara's eyes were bright with tears. "I was wrong about a lot of things, but not this. Not you." Eli kissed her, gentle and fierce all at once. When he pulled back, there were tears on his cheeks. "I'm going to be a father," he said, like he was testing the words. "You're going to be a wonderful father." "How do you know?" "Because you're a wonderful man." Clara touched his face. "Because you saved me when no one else would. Because you showed me what love really looks like." Eli pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you, Clara McAllister. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you too," Clara smiled through her tears. "Both of us do." The pregnancy was not easy. Clara was 34, older than most first-time mothers. The morning sickness lasted well into her 2nd trimester. She had to cut back on her clinic hours, which frustrated her to no end. "You need to rest," Eli kept telling her. "I need to work," she kept responding. They compromised. Clara saw patients 3 days a week instead of 6. On the other days, she trained Catherine Mill's niece, a bright young woman named Sarah, who had always wanted to be a nurse. "You're building something that will last," Catherine told her one afternoon. "Something that will help people long after you're gone." "That's the idea," Clara rubbed her growing belly. "I want to leave this town better than I found it." "You already have." As winter turned to spring, Clara felt the baby growing stronger inside her. She felt kicks and flutters, tiny signs of the life she and Eli had created together. And for the first time since Thomas had died, she allowed herself to hope. The labor started on a warm afternoon in late May. Clara was at the clinic, showing Sarah how to stitch a wound, when the first contraction hit. She gripped the edge of the table, breathing through the pain. "Mrs. McAllister?" Sarah's voice was alarmed. "Are you all right?" "Get Eli," Clara said through gritted teeth. "The baby's coming." The next several hours were a blur of pain and fear and determination. Clara had delivered dozens of babies for other women, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The overwhelming intensity, the feeling that her body was no longer her own. Eli stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, talking her through each contraction. "You're doing so well," he kept saying. "You're so strong."
"I'm so proud of you." "If you don't stop talking," Clara gasped, "I'm going to kill you." "Yes, ma'am." The midwife, a capable woman named Ruth, who had delivered half the babies in the county, took charge with calm efficiency. But Clara could see the concern in her eyes as the hours stretched on. "The baby's turned wrong," Ruth finally said. "I need to try to reposition it." Clara nodded, too exhausted to speak. The next few minutes were the most painful of her life. But then, suddenly, miraculously, she felt the baby shift. "That's it," Ruth said. "That's it. Now push." Clara pushed with everything she had. She pushed through the pain and the exhaustion and the fear. She pushed for Eli, for their future, for the life they had built together. And then, in a rush of relief, it was over. A thin, reedy cry filled the room. "It's a girl," Ruth said, her voice thick with emotion. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Clara looked at the tiny, squalling bundle in Ruth's arms. Her daughter. Her and Eli's daughter. "Give her to me," Clara whispered. "Please." Ruth placed the baby in Clara's arms. She was small and red and perfect, with a tuft of dark hair and the most beautiful face Clara had ever seen. Eli leaned over them, his eyes wet with tears. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Clara, she's absolutely perfect. She looks like you." Clara touched the baby's tiny cheek. "She has your chin. She has your eyes." Eli reached out one trembling finger and let the baby grasp it. "What should we name her?" Clara thought about everything they had been through, the darkness and the fear, the courage and the hope, the people who had helped them when they had nothing. "Hope," she said finally. "Her name is Hope." Eli kissed her forehead, then the baby's. "Hope McAllister," he said. "It's perfect." Clara looked at her husband, at her daughter, at the life she had never dared to dream of. "Yes," she whispered. "It is." The first night with Hope was sleepless but beautiful. Clara lay in bed with the baby beside her, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. Eli sat in the chair by the window, unable to take his eyes off either of them. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up," he said quietly, "that this is all a dream." "It's not a dream." Clara reached out and touched his hand. "This is real. This is our life." "I don't deserve this." Eli's voice was rough. "After everything I've done, all the people I've hurt." "Stop!" Clara's voice was firm. "You deserve this, Eli. You deserve happiness. You deserve love. You've paid for whatever sins you think you committed 100 times over." "Have I?" "Yes." Clara pulled him toward her. "Now come here. Lie down with us. Hold your daughter." Eli climbed into the bed beside her, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. He wrapped his arms around both of them, his family, and let out a long, shaky breath. "Thank you," he whispered into Clara's hair. "For what?"
"For saving me. For showing me what life could be. For giving me this." Clara smiled in the darkness. "You saved me first." "I reckon we saved each other." "I reckon we did." They lay there in the quiet, listening to Hope's soft breathing, feeling the warmth of each other's bodies. And in that moment, Clara knew. Everything they had suffered, Everything they had lost, everything they had fought for, it had all led to this man, this child, this life they were building together. It had all been worth it. Hope McAllister took her first steps on a crisp autumn morning, 9 months after she was born. Clara was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard Eli's voice from the other room. "Clara! Clara, come quick!" She dropped everything and ran, her heart pounding. But when she reached the doorway, she stopped. Hope was standing in the middle of the room, wobbling on her chubby legs. Eli was kneeling a few feet away, his arms outstretched.
"Come on, sweetheart," he said softly. "Come to Papa." Hope took one step, then another. Then she fell forward into Eli's arms, giggling. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "She walked," she whispered. "Eli, she walked." She did. Eli was crying too, holding their daughter close. "She's perfect, Clara. She's absolutely perfect." Clara crossed the room and knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Her family, her whole world. "I never thought I'd have this," she said quietly. "A husband, a child, a home. After Thomas died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never feel joy again." "And now?" Clara pulled back and looked at Eli's face, at the lines around his eyes, the silver beginning to thread through his hair, the love that shone from every feature. "Now I have more joy than I know what to do with." The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. Clara's clinic grew from a single room into a proper medical practice. She trained 3 more nurses, including Sarah, who became skilled enough to handle most cases on her own. People came from all over the territory to seek Clara's help. Miners with broken bones, ranchers with infections, mothers with difficult pregnancies. She lost patients too. That was the hardest part. No matter how skilled she became, no matter how hard she worked, some people couldn't be saved. Each death carved a small piece out of her heart. "How do you bear it?" Eli asked her one night, after she'd lost a young mother to childbirth. "How do you keep going?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "Because for every one I lose, there are 10 I save. Because if I stop, those 10 don't have anyone else. Because giving up would mean all the ones I've already saved didn't matter." "They matter." "I know." Clara leaned into him. "That's why I keep going." Hope grew from a toddler into a bright, curious child who followed her mother around the clinic asking endless questions. "Why does Mr. Patterson's leg hurt?" "Because he broke it and it didn't heal right." "Can you fix it?" "I'm trying." "Will I be able to fix things when I grow up?" Clara knelt down to look her daughter in the eye. "You can be anything you want to be, Hope. Doctor, teacher, rancher, lawyer, anything at all." "What if I want to be like Papa?" "Then you'll be like Papa, strong and brave and kind." Hope considered this. "I think I want to be like both of you." Clara pulled her daughter into a hug, her heart overflowing. "That's the best answer I've ever heard." When Hope was 5, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there were no complications. The pregnancy was smooth, the labor was quick, and on a warm June morning, she delivered a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas, after Clara's first husband. "Are you sure?" Eli asked, holding the tiny bundle in his arms. "Naming him after another man?" "Thomas was a good man," Clara said. "He deserved to be remembered. And without him, I never would have found you." Eli looked at her, his eyes soft. "You really believe that?" "I believe that everything happens for a reason. Even the terrible things. They lead us to where we're supposed to be."
And where are we supposed to be? Clara smiled. Right here. Together. The children grew, and the ranch prospered. Eli expanded the property, buying up land from ranchers who wanted to retire. He hired hands to help with the cattle, built new barns and fences, turned what had been a modest operation into one of the most successful ranches in the territory. But he never forgot where he came from. He paid fair wages, treated his workers with respect, and gave second chances to men who had made mistakes in their pasts. "You're too soft," Sheriff Hartley told him once. The sheriff had retired years ago, but he still came around to give unsolicited advice. "One of those ex-convicts is going to steal you blind." "Maybe," Eli said. "Or maybe one of them is going to become the best ranch hand I've ever had. Won't know until I give them a chance." "You sound like your wife." Eli smiled. "I take that as a compliment." Hope turned 10 the same year Clara received word that Harlan Blackwood had died in prison. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a territorial marshal who had ridden out from Denver specifically to inform her. Clara read it twice, then handed it to Eli without a word. "How do you feel?" he asked after he'd read it. "I don't know." Clara sat down slowly. "I thought I'd feel relieved or happy, but I just feel nothing." "Maybe that's good. Maybe it means he doesn't have power over you anymore." "He stopped having power over me the day you pulled me out of that cellar." Clara looked up at him. "I just wish I could tell him that. I wish he could know that I won, not because he died, but because I lived, really lived." Eli sat down beside her and took her hand. "He knows. Wherever he is, he knows." "Do you really believe that?" "I believe that evil men die alone and afraid, and good people die surrounded by love. That's the only justice that matters." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "When did you get so philosophical?" "About the time I married a woman smarter than me." That evening, Clara walked out to the small cemetery on the hill behind the ranch. It was where they had buried Reverend Whitfield 2 years ago, after his heart gave out during Sunday service. It was where they had laid to rest the patients Clara had lost over the years, the ones who had no family to claim them. She stood there for a long time, looking out at the land she had learned to love. "It's over," she said quietly, to no one in particular. "It's finally over." The wind stirred her hair, and somewhere in the distance a bird sang. Clara closed her eyes and let the peace wash over her. Then she walked back down the hill to her family. Hope announced at 14 that she wanted to be a doctor. "Not a nurse," she clarified, standing in the middle of the kitchen with her hands on her hips. "A real doctor, with a degree and everything." Clara and Eli exchanged looks. "That's going to be hard," Clara said carefully. "There aren't many medical schools that accept women." "Then I'll find one that does." Hope's chin lifted stubbornly. "You always told me I could be anything I wanted. Did you mean it or not?" "I meant it." "Then help me." Clara felt tears pricking at her eyes. Not sadness, pride. Overwhelming, fierce pride in this daughter who had inherited her father's determination and her mother's compassion. "We'll write to every medical school in the country," Clara said. "We'll find one that will take you. And if none of them will, we'll fight until they change their minds." Hope's face broke into a smile. "Really?" "Really." Hope threw her arms around her mother. "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Over Hope's shoulder, Clara met Eli's eyes. He was smiling, but there were tears on his cheeks. "That's our girl," he said quietly. "That's our girl." Thomas was different from his sister, quieter, more introspective. Where Hope charged ahead without fear, Thomas hung back and observed. Where Hope made friends easily, Thomas preferred the company of books and horses. "Is something wrong with him?" Clara asked Eli one night, after Thomas had spent another dinner in silence. "He barely talks anymore." "Nothing's wrong with him. He's just figuring out who he is." "He's 12 years old." "I was quiet at 12 too." Eli set down the book he'd been reading. "My father used to worry I was simple. Turned out I was just thinking."
What were you thinking about?
Everything. The world, my place in it, what I wanted to do with my life. Eli smiled. "Give him time, Clara. He'll find his voice." A week later, Thomas came to Clara with a stack of papers covered in neat handwriting. "What's this?" she asked. "Stories." Thomas's cheeks flushed. "I've been writing them. About Papa. About you. About how you met." Clara looked down at the first page. The night was dark and cold, and Eli McAllister had no idea that his life was about to change forever. She read for an hour, unable to stop. Thomas had captured everything: the fear and the hope, the danger and the love, the small moments that had seemed insignificant at the time but had meant everything in hindsight. When she finished, there were tears streaming down her face. "Thomas," she whispered, "this is beautiful." "You really think so?" "I know so." Clara pulled him into a hug. "You have a gift, sweetheart. A real gift."
Papa said I should show them to you. He said you'd understand.
Clara looked across the room to where Eli was standing in the doorway, watching them with a soft smile. "Your papa was right," she said. "He usually is." The letter arrived on Hope's 18th birthday. Clara found it in the morning mail, sandwiched between a seed catalog and a bill from the general store. The return address made her heart stop. "Hope!" she called out, her voice shaking. "Hope, come here!" Hope came running, still in her nightgown. "What is it? What's wrong?" Clara handed her the letter without a word. Hope's hands trembled as she tore it open. She read it once, then again, then looked up at her mother with eyes full of tears. "I got in," she whispered. "Mama, I got in. The Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. They accepted me." Clara let out a sob and pulled her daughter into her arms. "I knew it. I knew they would. I'm so proud of you, Hope. So proud." "I can't believe it." Hope was laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm going to be a doctor. A real doctor." "You were always going to be a doctor. You just needed someone to give you a chance." Eli appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on?" "She got in." Clara held up the letter. "Eli, she got in." Eli's face transformed. He crossed the room in 3 strides and swept Hope off her feet, spinning her around like she was 5 years old again. "That's my girl," he said, his voice thick. "That's my brilliant, stubborn, amazing girl." "I learned from the best," Hope said, hugging him tight. "Both of you." Hope left for Pennsylvania in September. The whole town turned out to see her off. People Clara had treated over the years, children who had grown up with Hope, neighbors and friends who had watched her transform from a colicky infant into a determined young woman. "You'll write?" Clara said, holding her daughter's hands at the train station. "Every week, I promise."
And you'll come home for Christmas?
"I'll try."
And you'll be careful? And you'll eat enough? And you won't stay up too late studying?
Hope laughed. "Mama, I'll be fine."
I know you will.
Clara pulled her into one last hug.
I just don't know if I will. You'll have Papa and Thomas and the clinic. You'll be so busy you'll forget I'm gone.
"Never." Clara pulled back and touched her daughter's face. "I will never forget you for a single second." The train whistle blew.
I have to go,
Hope said.
I love you, Mama. I love you, Papa.
We love you too, sweetheart. Eli's voice was rough. Now go make us proud. Hope climbed onto the train, and Clara watched until it disappeared around the bend. Then she turned into Eli's arms and cried. She's going to change the world, Eli said, holding her tight. Just like her mother.
I didn't change the world.
You changed mine. Clara looked up at him through her tears.
When did you become such a romantic?
About the time I fell in love with you. The house felt empty without Hope. Clara threw herself into her work, seeing more patients than ever, training more nurses, pushing herself harder and harder. Eli worried about her, but he knew better than to try to stop her. This was how Clara dealt with loss, by filling the void with purpose. Thomas was 16 now, tall and quiet and kind. He spent his days helping on the ranch and his nights writing stories. He had started sending them to magazines in the East, and to everyone's surprise, some of them had actually been published. "Your son's famous," Catherine Mills told Clara one afternoon, waving a copy of Harper's Weekly. "There's a story in here with his name on it." Clara read the story, a tale of a young cowboy who falls in love with a schoolteacher, and felt her heart swell with pride. "He's going to outshine us all," she said. "He already has." Catherine smiled.
You and Eli raised good children, Clara. You should be proud.
I am. Clara touched the page where Thomas's name was printed. I'm prouder than I ever thought possible. Hope came home for Christmas that year, full of stories about medical school. It's harder than I expected, she admitted, sitting by the fire with a cup of cocoa. Some of the professors don't think women should be doctors. They make it difficult. How do you handle it? Clara asked. I study twice as hard as everyone else. I answer every question. I prove them wrong every single day. Hope's eyes flashed. I'm not going to let anyone stop me, not after everything you went through to get me there. I didn't go through anything. You did. You went through plenty. Hope set down her cup and looked at her mother seriously. I know the story, Mama. Thomas wrote it all down. I know about the cellar. I know about Blackwood. I know about everything. Clara felt her breath catch.
Thomas showed you his stories? He didn't have to. I found them. I read them. Hope reached out and took her mother's hand. I used to wonder why you were so determined, why you pushed yourself so hard, why you never gave up on anything. Now I know. You survived, Mama. You survived and you thrived and you built this incredible life out of nothing. That's what gives me strength, knowing that I come from someone who refused to be destroyed. Clara couldn't speak. Tears were flowing down her face, but she didn't try to stop them. I'm going to be a doctor, Hope continued, and I'm going to help women like you. Women who have been hurt. Women who have been told they're worthless. Women who have lost everything. I'm going to give them hope, just like you gave me. Clara pulled her daughter into her arms and held on tight. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much. I love you too, Mama. Forever and always. The years passed like water through fingers. Too fast, too precious, impossible to hold. Hope graduated from medical school at the top of her class. She came back to Colorado and opened a practice in Denver, specializing in women's health. Within 5 years, she was one of the most respected doctors in the territory. Thomas published his first novel at 22. It was the story of his parents, fictionalized, romanticized, but true at its core. The book became a sensation, selling thousands of copies across the country. People wrote to him from everywhere, telling him how the story had touched them, how it had given them hope. Clara and Eli watched their children soar, and they held each other close. We did good, Eli said one evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set over the mountains. Didn't we?
We did good. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. Better than good. We did something amazing. I meant us too. You and me. Clara looked at him, at this man who had saved her life, who had given her everything, who had loved her through darkness and light. Yes, she said softly. We did good too. Clara was 60 years old when her heart began to fail. She knew what it was the moment she felt the first flutter. She had seen it too many times in her patients to mistake it for anything else. How long? Eli asked when she told him. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. A few years, maybe less. There's no way to know for certain. What can we do? Nothing. Clara took his hands in hers. We can't fight this, Eli. We can only accept it. I don't accept it, Eli's voice cracked. I won't. You can't leave me, Clara. You can't. I'm not leaving yet. Clara touched his face. We still have time. Let's not waste it being afraid. They didn't tell the children at first. They wanted to enjoy the time they had left, without the shadow of grief hanging over every moment.
But Hope figured it out. She was a doctor, after all.
She saw the signs that Clara tried to hide. How bad is it? Hope asked, cornering her mother in the clinic one afternoon. Bad enough. Clara didn't see the point in lying. But I'm not dead yet, so stop looking at me like I am. Mama. I mean it, Hope. I've lived a good life, a full life. When the time comes, I'll be ready. I won't be. Clara pulled her daughter close. That's okay. You don't have to be ready. You just have to keep living. That's all any of us can do. The last year was hard. Clara's strength faded slowly, like a candle burning down. She closed the clinic, turning it over to Sarah, who had become a skilled nurse in her own right. She spent her days on the ranch, surrounded by family, watching the life she had built continue without her. Eli never left her side. He held her hand through the bad days and the worse ones. He read to her when she was too tired to read herself. He told her stories about their life together, reminding her of moments she had almost forgotten. Remember the first time I kissed you? He asked one night, lying beside her in the dark. You kissed me in the street, Clara murmured. Right after we found out Blackwood was dead. No, that wasn't the first time. The first time was in the barn, the day after the trial. You were crying, and I couldn't stand it, so I just kissed you. That doesn't count. That was barely a kiss. It counted to me. Eli pulled her closer. Everything with you counted. Every moment, every kiss, every day we spent together. Even the hard days? Especially the hard days. Those were the ones that showed me who you really are. Clara turned her head to look at him. Even in the darkness, she could see his eyes, still the same shade of gray they had been the day he found her in that cellar. I'm scared, she admitted. I wasn't before, but now I am. I don't want to leave you. Then don't. Eli's voice was rough. Stay with me, Clara, just a little longer. I'll try. She touched his face. I'll try. Clara McAllister died on a quiet morning in May, with Eli holding her hand and their children by her side. She went peacefully, without pain, slipping from sleep into something deeper. Her last words were simple. I love you, she said. All of you. Forever. And then she was gone. They buried her on the hill behind the ranch, next to Reverend Whitfield and all the others who had gone before. Half the county came to pay their respects, people whose lives Clara had touched, people she had saved, people who had found hope because of her. Eli stood at the grave long after everyone else had left. You saved me, he said quietly. You know that, don't you? When I found you in that cellar, I thought I was saving you. But it was the other way around. You gave me a reason to live. You gave me a family. You gave me everything. He touched the headstone, tracing the letters of her name. "I'll see you again someday. I know I will. But until then, I'm going to keep living. For you, for our children, for everything we built together." He turned and walked back down the hill, toward the house where his children were waiting. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful, the kind of beauty that Clara had always loved. Eli smiled. "See you soon, my love," he whispered. "See you soon." Eli McAllister lived for another 5 years, spending his days on the ranch and his nights writing letters to his children. When he finally passed, it was with Clara's name on his lips and her photograph clutched in his hand. They buried him next to her, just as he had wanted. Hope continued her medical practice for 30 more years, training a generation of women doctors who carried Clara's legacy forward. Thomas wrote 12 more novels, each one touching hearts and changing lives. Their children had children, who had children of their own, and the McAllister name became synonymous with courage, compassion, and love. The ranch still stands today, over 100 years after Eli first bought it. The house has been rebuilt twice, the fences replaced a dozen times, but something of Clara and Eli remains. People who visit say they can feel it, a warmth, a presence, a sense that love never truly dies. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets behind the mountains, old-timers swear they can see 2 figures on the porch. A man and a woman, sitting close together, holding hands, watching over the land and the family they built from nothing but hope and determination. It is just a story, of course, a legend that grew up around 2 ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives. But the best stories are always true at their core. And this one is true in the way that matters most. Eli McAllister bought a ranch in Colorado and heard a woman crying in the darkness. He could have walked away. He could have minded his own business. He could have let fear win. But he didn't. He opened the door. And in doing so, he saved not just Clara, but himself. He proved that one act of courage can change everything. He proved that love is stronger than hate, and hope is stronger than despair. He proved that it is never too late to start over, never too late to find happiness, never too late to build a life worth living. That is not just a happy ending. That is the truth. And the truth is the only legacy that matters.